Matthew here from MiniWargaming.com, and it's time for another Sit and Talk. This is a show where you ask me anything about anything related to wargaming, business, sometimes it gets to politics or even religion. So if you're easily offended by topics such as religion, please don't watch the show because if it comes up, then I answer the questions. Of course, if you have more like deep religious questions, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the show. You can always email me, Matthew@MiniWargaming.com, with those questions. So I got a bunch of them printed off here. If you want your comment or question answered, make sure you leave a comment in the section below, unless you're watching this on YouTube, in which case make sure you click the link in the video description below. Not that I don't like YouTube comments, it's just that they're easier to organize on our website. But before I get into any comments, I got to show you this. This is a custom-built Thunderhawk gunship made by Alexander Lee from Iceland. I just got it in the mail yesterday and finally got a chance to look at it today because I was in battle reports all day yesterday. There's a couple breakages because of shipping that I still have to repair, and there's just a couple things that have kind of ripped a little bit, but I wanted to show it today because it looks so awesome. So I'm definitely going to try to get this into a battle report as soon as possible. Oh, and check out the stand. See a really cool stand, huh? It's a drumstick, which I think is so cool. So thank you very much, Alexander Lee from Iceland, for sending that to us. It even has on the side Latin for "we work so you can play." So so that's just really cool. So I look forward to using it. Obviously uses a lot of Games Workshop bits to get like the weapons and stuff, but the rest of it's all really cool. Even like did the cockpit and everything. So this video is not going to do it justice. You're going to have to wait to see it in other battle reports, but it's awesome, and I'm really excited about it. I have a new Harridan that's been painted that's been sitting up on the shelf for a few weeks. And it's hard to use the big stuff in regular games because, well, we're just playing 1,500, 2,000 point games. But probably going to need to have like a matchup of like the Space Marines with the Thunderhawk against things like the Harridan. So a a gargantuan flyer against a super heavy flyer. I think that'd be kind of cool. Although obviously not just super balanced by itself. Maybe Dave will do a who would win between the Harridan and the Thunderhawk gunship. Who knows? But thank you very much. So let's jump into the questions. Of course, when you're leaving comments, make sure you look through the other comments, and if you see any that you like, thumb up those comments, because what I do is I take the top 10 rated questions and answer those first, unless I don't want to answer them because I can always make that decision. And then I just choose random questions after that. So it actually spits them out randomly after the top 10. So let's begin. D. Henning. Hey Matt, I have a question about playing against players with less experience or knowledge about 40K. Last week I had 2 wins against less experienced players, one an adult beginner and one a younger player, and both felt a little hollow. I keep a joking, friendly attitude the whole game, but want to get better at helping my opponent have fun as an ambassador of the game. Do you know of any good strategies to make the game fun for both players if one is losing by turn 2 or just began learning the rules? Vault member in Strife, D. That is hard because really the rule of thumb when teaching any game to a beginner is to always lose. That's actually quite important because there is a certain, like we play to win, like even the less competitive gamers really play to try to win the battle report or to win the game. And so you need to, as an ambassador, lose the games, but that can be boring for you because, well, you're obviously trying to throw the game in such a way that they don't know. So you can build a weaker list, for example, really give yourself a handicap. And I think the white balance is a little off, a little red. I think I had to adjust it in another room and I didn't adjust again, so whatever. But anyways, so that's the best strategy for teaching new players is to let them win. Because they have more fun and they're more likely to get some into the game. And then after, maybe 2 or 3 games, you start actually giving them a bit of a challenge so they can see how the game plays otherwise. Because obviously part of playing is knowing that you're not always going to win. Certain players might have a larger win ratio than others, but in the end, everybody ends up losing some of their games. So yeah, it can be kind of challenging though because it's harder for you to have fun, but it's kind of an investment. If you can get these people into it, then they can end up being long-term players and more people for you to play against. So it's kind of an investment in that area. Colossus, Matt, will you do a breakdown of the new Necron Codex with Steve? Most likely. Definitely will be doing Necron Codex reviews for the new stuff that comes out. There's the rumor state it'll be out for pre-order this coming Saturday, so tomorrow. And Steve seems like a good person to have beside me to do it, as long as he's available for that and not busy in other videos, then I'll definitely get him to tag along for that. Mrs. Wisher, Matt, get an orc army for the studio. We actually have an orc army, about 3,000 points. It's the one that Dan used when he worked here, and then we bought it off of him when he left. It doesn't see much use for a couple reasons. One, nobody's really into orcs here. And two, it's not really fully done being painted. It was kind of half painted, like painted enough that it can be used, but a lot of the bases aren't done. A lot of the paint jobs are kind of 80% of the way there. And that's orcs, and orcs just aren't, as I at least see that this is what I mean, like there's just nobody here that necessarily likes them. This white balance is really bothering me. Let's see if I can change it on the fly. No, you can't change it. Hold on. I think that's a little better. Not sure if you notice any difference. Anyway, so yeah, so just a matter of somebody getting into orcs. Who knows, we might be able to get somebody soon. Axis 762, wait, what happened to Horus? I'm assuming you're joking, considering it's called the Horus Heresy. But if you don't know, then I suggest you pick up the Warhammer 40k rulebook and then just read through that. Or wiki it on Lexicanum, and it's pretty straightforward. Eisenstein, hi Matt, why do you think that the Tyranids haven't been corrupted by chaos? Is the hive mind really so strong it can resist the lure of chaos? Or is the hive mind actually the fifth chaos god? Cheers from Denmark, fought member from before narrative campaigns. I don't think it's the fifth chaos god. I think there's somewhere in the lore that you can actually look up and you can find that the fifth chaos god was something else. I don't think it's a chaos god at all. It stands to reason that it could be a chaos entity controlling the Tyranids. Just as a collection of all of their souls, maybe a different way of thinking, because the chaos gods in our galaxy are based on the emotions of the different alien races that have a link to the warp. So I don't know. Obviously, nobody knows. I don't even know if Games Workshop really knows, unless they really have already figured out exactly where the Tyranids came from and everything about their origin. But they might not have figured that out yet. So my theories about why they wouldn't be able to be corrupted by chaos, there's a couple ways you could look at it. One is that they're soulless, and it hints at that in the Tyranid Codex when they have a fight against the demons, and the demons just like kind of flicker in and out of existence around them. And Khorne isn't happy with killing them because there's no blood, and the other gods aren't happy with everything that's going on because there's no souls to twist. And so all the Tyranid creatures are soulless, and so they don't really. It's funny because in a way they don't really have a connection to the warp. Well, obviously they have a humongous connection to the warp, but is their connection to the warp more a byproduct of the way they work as a hive mind, or does the hive mind really use the warp to connect them together telepathically, like the synapse and all of that? We don't really know because, well, I don't know if it's even developed, never mind actually having an answer. But I would think that there's some, I don't like the idea of kind of this one entity controlling them all. I really hope that it never goes in that direction, because the thing I love about the Tyranids is that they have that kind of soulless approach to them. Not like the Necrons. Necrons are, you can kind of look at them as individuals controlling maybe some some robots, basically. Automatons. I'm probably getting that word wrong. Anyways, so I kind of see the Tyranids more like a true insect colony, where there actually is a group, not a group consciousness, but it's just one big organism, one enormous organism. We look at it as being a bunch of little things working together, but if you really look at your body, if you were to look close enough at all the molecules and stuff that are in your hand, there's large spaces between them, but yet they still interact with each other and they form this body that we have. And so I kind of look at the Tyranids as being that, even all the hive fleets really just being different parts of the same body, and then within that becoming more complicated. So it's just an incredibly complex, large body. And so you might think, well, that stands to reason there's one thing controlling them, and that's true, but it's just something that's so alien to the way we think. I kind of think of like Ender's Game. Ender's Game, the series, Orson Scott Card does a really cool job, or a really good job of creating they're nicknamed the buggers in the books. The alien species. Basically, they're insect-like race. They have queens that you kind of get the persona of the queens being in control of everything else, but in the end, they're so used to working as a group in their brains that they have a hard time seeing humans at first as actually being intelligent species because they don't work as a group. They're all individuals. How can an individual have the brain power of a huge group? And in some ways they're right, because there is a big advantage and a big disadvantage to that kind of mentality. But I think I see the Tyranids as kind of being a step further than that, where there's not even like a centralized queen necessarily. It's more like where there's the largest concentration of organisms, you get the most of the presence of the hive mind there. And it would make sense that that's through the warp, but I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Can they be corrupted by chaos? Well, no, of course not. But they could be, you know, Nurgle can get diseases into them, but other than that, it's not like the chaos can really get control of them in any way. Which I like. I don't want them to become like the Zerg, where it has this human element, and then, you know, humans figure out how to control them, or whatever. It's just, you know, they need to remain the faceless craziness that they are. Colonial Raptor. There's been a frightening lack of battle reports featuring Matt lately. What's going on? I'm a Vault member for the reports Matt does, and I haven't seen him do anything for the last month, and thus I haven't watched a single bat rep the entire of January. I can answer that. It's not. I've just been recording a lot of narrative campaigns recently, but by the time I've read this comment, you know that I've posted battle reports on Monday, and you're going to see more battle reports from me, because like next week alone, I think I'll be recording enough for 3 or 4 weeks of content. So yeah, you're going to see me. It's an ebb and flow. Sometimes I get busy with campaigns and Dave does a bunch of battle reports. Sometimes he's really busy doing his narrative campaigns and I do a bunch of battle reports. And so it also depends on when players come in to play against us and all that. We do want to kind of eventually be able to get to the point where, you know, it would be nice if there was a day of beat map bat reps and another separate day of banter bat reps. The only thing is, because of the nature of our kind of job descriptions, it's hard for Dave and I to be super consistent, because we do other things as well. So especially the narrative campaigns. I've been recording a narrative campaign with Leland again, featuring Grey Knights and Tau and Imperial Guard and Demons, and that's taken a lot of time. Like it's this week alone, we recorded for 2 days and just got 2 missions done, mission 3A and 3B. Oh, phone is ringing. Let's turn that off. And then I still have to do the story times and all that for it. So to make a 6-week-long narrative campaign takes, you know, probably 15 plus working days to get that done. That's equivalent to 3 weeks of work. So about half the time for those 6 weeks that it's out, that's basically the amount of time it takes to make those. So it produces less content, but they get a lot more views and a lot more vault signups. So I'm not worried about the cost of it that it is to create them, because by far they get way more views and vault signups than just regular battle reports on average. There's certain battle reports that get lots of views and all that, but overall the narrative campaigns do really well that way. So it's more just that. It's more the type of content, and then other than that, you're going to see it. So it's just ebb and flow. Sometimes you'll see more of me, sometimes you'll see more of Dave. Shazoo, question: does Steve actually own the Eldar and White Scar's armies? The Eldar, yes. The White Scar is a studio army. I think you were referred to as Steve's armies. If so, how could he possibly afford that many models? Well, like I said, the Eldar are his. Either you guys are really good employers, he's got old family money, or has a really successful night job, either a bouncer or I'll leave out the other part. But no, those are his. I can't tell you about his personal finances, partly because I shouldn't, and the other part because I really don't know them. So that Eldar army, though, he actually built that army before he started working here. So like basically he did a narrative campaign with me, the Fate of Fayum, and then we were like, we would like to do an Eldar campaign. Dave actually said that to him. He's like, I'll build an Eldar army. And he built up a 4,000 point Eldar army in like a month. But that was before he worked for us, so. Demon 666, Matt, considering that Games Workshop is moving forward the timeline in fantasy, do you think that they might start doing it with 40K? I've been asked this question in the past couple sit talks, and my answer is, I believe so. I hope they do. I mean, it seems like it'd open things up for some even crazier models or things. Might be a good time to start bringing in Primarchs back in the present timeline. Yeah, because you look at Forge World and they're making them. Not that Forge World necessarily aligns with what Games Workshop is going to be doing with 40K, because they are kind of two separate entities, even though the one is owned by the other. But it would be nice to have a reason to be able to use Primarchs, I agree. Besides just friendly games and using the Primarchs as you want to. Enigma 2212. Hey Matt, my wife and I are planning a trip to see you guys in the distant future, and we're wondering if you and Dave would play doubles against us. 40K is our together hobby, and we have a billion times more fun playing together. We don't typically do doubles because it's just not an efficient use of time. Because in the same amount of time, I could play you and he could play your wife or vice versa. And if you come for a couple days, we could actually swap and just get lots of games in. And so, you know, when we look at the number of games that we're getting in, it's just, doubles just isn't typically something that we do. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't do it. So feel free, of course, when you decide that you want to come, just to ask. But yeah. Vault member, so long as my cat allows. Kajoti. Hey Matt, that moment when you said that we would definitely want Putin to invade Europe was actually quite awesome. You immediately qualified it, and I realized that you probably don't know that Putin is the Russian president. See, I thought it was poutine. Somebody wrote it as poutine. Not Putin, because now that you wrote it as P-U-T-I-N, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like that Russian guy. But they said poutine. Isn't that what that said? I thought it said poutine. I'm pretty sure they wanted Putin to invade Europe. But it was pretty shocking second, to be honest. I couldn't believe it, and then I broadly grinned upon your explanation. Poutine should definitely invade Europe, because poutine is really awesome and it tastes really good. The Russian president Putin, I know he probably shouldn't. Just my political 2 cents. Also, Steve Reps, yay! I still love that guy, even a bit more than the rest of you, but don't feel too bad, for I like all of you pretty much. Winky face. That's okay. You're allowed to like certain content producers over others. It's fine. It's all mini wargaming, so hey, you like Steve, it's still you like mini wargaming. Works for me. Essayon 24, or Essayon 24. I guess it would be Essayon 24. Hey Matt, just curious, do you think that Games Workshop will eventually do supplements for the other chapters listed in the Space Marine Codex? Well, I mentioned that last week that I thought it was a good idea. Will they do it? Sure. I think they will. I'm curious to see, once the Necron Codex comes out, which is next week, I think that is all the codexes brought to the hardcover mode. There's still some that could use an update, like Chaos, but then they did the Corn Butcher's thingy, and so maybe they'll just update it with supplements. I think that's a really cool business model, a good way of doing it, because it allows you not to have to, you know, they probably have a ton of books in stock and they don't want to just throw those away, so they can keep selling those books and keep making new supplements to kind of, it's not that the rules need updating, it's the balance needs updating as new stuff comes out. So supplements are a good way to change the balance of the game. And I think it's a brilliant way to do it. Every once in a while, yeah, sure, introduce a new edition, redo all the books, kind of a good resurgence of cash. But until then, the supplements, just data slates, all that kind of stuff just seems like, yeah, do that. And so I hope that that's what they really start to push. Large Cats. Hey, Matt. Firsty of all, I just wanted to say thanks for getting me back into 40K. Yourself and the rest of the mini wargaming team made the hobby very appealing. Well, you're welcome. My question, however, is what are your opinions on Games Workshop's expansions like Sanctus Reach and Shield of Baal? As a new Blood Angels player, I was very unhappy to hear that the vast majority of formations for Blood Angels or Flesh Tearers are included in a 40-pound expansion book. Do you think all essential content for an army should be included in the base codex? I guess I just answered that question. No, I don't think so. Because then you're limiting their releases to a one-time release. It's not just a question of, like, I don't think they should create a codex and then like remove stuff and stick it into supplements. I don't feel that's right. And I don't really feel that they've done that, because formations, they've never really set a precedent to have formations in the codex, at least not very many of them. And so it's always been like here's your codex, and then there's supplements on top of that. And really, I think it's a good idea, because then they can keep the book and they don't have to keep updating the book, and they can do the supplements. So I think it's a great idea. Yes, there's more cost involved, but this hobby is not cheap anyways. So it's kind of part of it is that we have to kind of fork out that money for it. Colossus. The Necrons theoretically have the fastest faster-than-light drives in the Warhammer 40k universe, as they still have their inertialess drives as Imperial Armor 12. Other than the mention of dolmen gates, or wormholes, and that whole mention of them having a point-and-click instantaneous drives before 5th edition, which sounds a little OP. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of retconning going back and forth, because, let's face it, 40k is not hard science fiction. It's fantasy in space. And so they just kind of, you know, Necrons get to point A and point B because story. Space Marines, like the warp is a fickle friend, and like it could spit you out at any time and any place. And that works great for story, because they can be like, yep, they get there in time, or nope, they're delayed by a couple days because, you know, the warp. And that's kind of what makes it fun and really good for storytelling, because you can do that and you always have a reason, and it's never too far-fetched because it's already in a far-fetched universe. Kayla, hey Matt, does anyone at Mini Wargaming play Magic the Gathering? I don't think so. Also, random fact, 2015 will be 1 second longer than all years before. Interesting. And why is that? I'm not quite sure why that would be. Skolodo, hello Matt. First, I would like to make some sense with faster than light drives for 40k races. As I understand that there are 4 types of faster than light, can you say if I understand them right or if I didn't skip anything? 1, Empire type, kind of warp hyperdrive. Yeah, so they use the kind of the fact that the warp doesn't follow the laws of nature or the laws of physics to kind of cheat the laws of physics. The Tau Empire drive, much slower as I understand. I'm not sure if it is still faster than light. According to what I read, it's not faster than light. It's very near the speed of light. 3, the Eldar way, the web way, so the corridors in the warp, somehow insulated from warp effects that shorten distance between 2 points. Yeah, so they cheat the speed of limit that way too. 4, speed of narration. Whatever Necrons or Tyranids use to make narration work despite having no faster than light Tyranid invasion 2 star systems away. I do not care. There will be hereafter about 250 years, and by that time we will have so much firepower that the will not even make planetfall. So yeah, exactly. Those ones they've never quite really specified. I'd love if they retconned and stuff like that and been like, okay, yes, pretty much like I said before, every race needs faster than light. Otherwise, they're not a threat. That's what it comes down to. If they take 250 years, like you said, if they're near the speed of light, let's say they're going the speed of light, which is impossible, but they're so near it that it's pretty much the speed of light. Still, like a lot of systems are light years apart, and so that's years to get from point A to point B. And if the Imperium can jump through the warp, they can basically definitely destroy them. I know there's the bureaucracy of the Imperium that slows things down, but let's face it, if the Tyranids are taking 10, 15 years between systems, then they're not much of a threat. At least not one in the short run. Next thing is my opinion about Kirk versus Picard. I vote Picard. Yes, as he said in films, and especially Undiscovered Country or Wrath of Khan were great, but in my opinion, no thanks to Kirk. Famous Khan! Anyone? In contest between the Next Generation and the original Star Trek or Undiscovered Country and First Contact, deciding would be tricky, but Picard versus Kirk is easier. Next, have you tried pizza with 4 kinds of cheese? No. Next, you said that if you were ignorant to news and politics from around the world, could you share some news of that kind from your country? Like what kind of news? Like what's going on with the political stuff right now? Not really. Not big. Like there's stuff I know, but most of it's not interesting. Maybe you film scores of new narrative campaigns. Sklodo. Thank you. Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the laboratory. Matt, can you please film some extra content showing the armies in each battle report a bit more in depth? Perhaps something that is a couple of extra minutes longer than normal. I think a lot of people would love to hear some more in-depth talk on why people chose certain units or particular build when they come in for a report. You know what? That's probably going to become more possible because I'm going to be shifting a little way. Probably I'm going to be experimenting with how I film when somebody comes in to allow for more time because I'm finding that it's just too much of a time crunch. So we might be doing. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to give too many details yet until I've really tested it. But I hope that I'll be able to spend more time on those kind of details. Wilhelm Screamer. You know the great thing about collecting guard? You can mash together any random platoons and units and it's still completely fluffy. That's true. Whole regiments get mashed together all the time. Query. What do you think is the absolute worst and the absolute best model on offer from Games Workshop? Best model? It would definitely... I don't know if I can give you one, but if we're not including Forge World, let's assume that because like their Primarchs are fantastic and stuff. I think the fantasy collection has the best to offer. Like I walked by and saw some of the new fantasy stuff from End Times, and it's just really cool. Like the Nagash model is really cool, and all of, like the Mortarks, I think they're called, they're just superbly well done. A lot of the Skaven stuff looks fantastic. So I don't know if I can give you a best model, especially because I'm not a modeler. I'm a collector, but it's more in the sense of collecting a lot of stuff, not so much like having this one thing that I love. What is the worst model? Well, if we're looking at the current range, and not the old Tyranid models, which looked ridiculous, or the old Orc models, which are laughable, I'd say in the current range, you know, they're also good. I'd probably have to like look at the Imperial Guard platoon guys, just because they're kind of bland. I know they're just humans, but I think they could do them better now because those ones they're getting old. It's really just like their older stuff. Like the older something gets, the worse it looks compared to their newer stuff, which all just looks fantastic. Like just absolutely fantastic. They kind of say that they're a model company first rather than a gaming company first, and they're absolutely right. Their models are fantastic. So really, it's the newer stuff is better, and the older stuff is usually worse because, well, obviously they've gotten better as time goes on. El Demonio de Revolution. What's up, Matt? Thanks for answering my shooty Tyranids in such an excellent way. These are my questions. 1, what is your take on bronies? What are bronies? Did I answer that one? Is this something like the last one?
Yeah. Bronies?
Isn't it something to do with ponies?
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's craziness.
It's craziness?
Yeah.
There's my opinion. What color scheme would you recommend for jungle-themed Tyranids? Well, I guess it would be if they're... There's 2 ways to look at it. One, you can go with like they're camouflaged, so you'd have the green and browns. Or you could go with the, I want them to look good on jungle-themed board, in which case you want to go with the contrasting colors, so your oranges and blues and reds to go with them, so they'll look better on the board rather than blending in. But no, it'd be more like your greens and browns if they're really sticking to the whole stealth mentality. 3, what if Tyranids were affected by chaos? I already talked about that. 4, are you Illuminati? As always, 2 + 2 = 4 equals mini wargaming equals Illuminati confirmed. No, that would be Half-Life 3 confirmed. Bye, Matt. Love you. No homo. Oh, I love how I just kind of read the stuff and then, you know, no filter there. HJKSOS. Sorry, it's so funny. HJKSOS. Tau skim the warp, basically making a large amount of small warp jumps. See, it's where the retconning comes in. Like sometimes it'll mention that they do that, but in the latest Tau Codex, it doesn't talk about them skimming the warp. It talks about them going almost the speed of light. Not spending long enough in the warp for anything bad to happen, but not having the weird warp shenanigans to happen. However, they are slower in comparison. I've had it explained that it takes a couple weeks to get from one inhabited system to the next, but days to the next star. The galaxy is huge after all. Soul armor. Hey Matt, not sure if you have answered this before, but is there a possibility of putting the MP3 version of Sit and Talks into a podcast form? I've talked about doing it. It is on my to-do list of what to figure out. Vault member for the foreseeable future, even if you don't make a podcast. Well, thank you for not threatening me. God, you're... Hey Matt, my group of tabletop players were thinking about trying out Warhammer Fantasy. With the recent rumors about 9th edition has brought up some concerns. Do you think that it would be a good idea to start collecting them now? Yes. I don't believe any of the rumors that say that models will become obsolete. I just can't fathom that Games Workshop would do that. That they would make a new rule set that would make them sell less models. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's never been the way they've done business. It's always about selling more models. So there's no way they're going to make stuff obsolete. Will they reorganize stuff, consolidate stuff, expand stuff? Of course, that can always happen. Look at the Black Templar into the Space Marines. We've seen that happen with reorganizations and all that kind of stuff. Could the Tomb Kings kind of disappear and just kind of get folded into an undead army? Yes, but the models won't. The models will still be useful. I'm 99.99% sure of that. So I wouldn't worry about it. Pat Rat 123. Matt, I've noticed your new Tau and Bat Reps as well as Dave's Reject narrative campaign, and was wondering if you could give us a spoiler-free hint about their involvement in the next campaign. Well, they're basic. Okay, I can give you the basic premise of the campaign because you're going to hear it right at the beginning. The Grey Knight Prognosticars, which is basically they're people who like scry through the warp and try to figure out what's going to happen in the future, thus giving the Grey Knights their reputation for always showing up on time for a demon incursion, and all of a sudden the Grey Knights just happen to get there. It's almost like they knew it was going to happen. It's because they did. They have prognosticars is what they're called. It's their Eldar Farseer kind of equivalent, the people that can see into the future, but they have to. The warp is not really good at telling you the future. It's all jumbled. Anyways, they detect a demon threat. I'm not going to go into details of what it is. You will find out on the story time, pretty much part 1. And the demon threat's on a Tau planet. So the Grey Knights, led by a Lord Inquisitor, who basically they bring along a bunch of Imperial Guard, and then Sisters of Battle do get involved in some way. The idea is they have an expedition going to this Tau planet so they can stop the Tau from releasing this demon force. And that's all I'll say, because I don't want to give away too much of the story. So the Tau are heavily involved. Right from mission 1A, there it is a fight against Tau. So they're probably in, out of the 12 missions that are created, they're probably going to be in like 8 to 10 of them. So there's going to be some side story stuff and some other stuff, obviously involving demons. But yeah, the Tau play a huge role in it. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Theosis. You should totally rename your new Banhammer Majolnerd. Tongue-in-cheek, I mean no offense. I'll remember for life. Hawk12, Matthew. Just wanted to throw a little feedback out there. And in truth, it is feedback rightly deserved. Dollar for dollar, Mini Wargaming is on point with consistently delivering quality content week in and week out. Well, thank you. I can honestly say that in our household, every dollar has to count, especially with respect to non-essentials. With braces for kids, sports, music, arts, art activities, well, these things add up. So when it came time to buy my Vault membership, that was something I really had to consider because that allocates a chunk of my hobby money. What makes it such a good investment is the replay value. I find I am able to peruse, there we go, the Vault on a given day, and there's always something I enjoy watching to pass the time at a painting table. So from me to Mini Wargaming, thank you for providing a great resource of entertainment at value. As always, slay the warlord, Rich. Thank you, Rich. That is very kind of you. And I hope that as time goes on, you'll get even more value. Not just because there's more stuff, which there will be, but because hopefully the same stuff improves. So our narrative campaigns get better and our battle reports improve and we just get better at it too. I hope that that's the direction we go. Captain Obvious, Matt, could you do another behind the scenes for Vault members? It's been a while since you've done one and it would be nice to see what's going on in the background as well. I always intended to do those on a regular basis and then it's just something that falls by the wayside because we just get so busy with other stuff that there's just no time in the day. But yeah, you will see more behind the scenes. They'll be sporadic though. Fat Squirrel. Hello Matt, 2 questions for you today. 1, which Heresy era Legion would you collect? I was asked that before and I actually don't have an answer to that yet because I don't know enough about them individually to really have a favorite. 2, have you or Ash or Steve or Dave ever thought about playing Flames of War? I'm sure Ash has played Flames of War. He's played a lot of games, so it makes sense that Flames of War would be on that list. Have we thought about it? I've said this before, I'm not really that interested in historical gaming, just because I've never really been a huge history buff, so it's just not my cup of tea. Having said that, the historical gaming market is big, and so it stands to reason that one day, as we grow, that we're going to kind of say, you know, where's the next opportunity for growth and number of viewers, and the historical gaming market will be on our radar because it is actually quite large. It's a different demographic, but it is large, so it's just something that might happen. It probably won't be Dave or I doing it, though. It'd probably be other people we'd hire to do that. Thanks for all the fantastic campaigns and battle reports. Vault member for life, Alec. Thank you. For the greater good, now that you collect Tau and have started reading the fluff, who do you think would win, the Tau or the Covenant? Huh. Good question. I don't know a lot about the Covenant. I've played the Halo games, at least the first 3. I stopped playing after that. So I know like the story that's told in the games. I know that the Covenant's a collection of races, just kind of like the Tau, and they have a religious kind of push, kind of like the Tau with their greater good. And that they have their Covenant have their leaders that everybody really follows, kind of like the Tau and the Ethereals, but not quite the same, obviously. Who would win? The Covenant are advanced technology. They're actually very similar in fluff, so I don't know enough about the Covenant to know how far-reaching their technology is, but the fact that humans in the not-too-distant future can put up a good fight against them would make me think that Tau would win, because the Tau can put up a good fight against the Imperium. And the Imperium, I know, is not, it's not really equivalent to technology 40,000 years from now, but still, it's something. And they held up against the Tyranids and everything. So I'd say the Tau. Oli Holt 1. Hi Matt, what car or cars are you driving? I'm not a car person. I am driving a Honda Fit because my parents had it and they were looking to sell it, so I bought it. And it's a nice vehicle. I like it. And a Ford Windstar for our van because we need a vehicle because we have 3 kids, so we need that. So we needed one for work and then one for transporting all the children around. So do you have any favorite cars? I honestly am not a car person. I think if I were super rich, you probably wouldn't see me driving a fancy car. Not because of modesty or humility, just because I don't care. I'd probably drive a nice one, something that has good features and all that, but I just don't really care. Also, what are your feelings on motorcycles? Motorcycles are fine. I've never actually driven one. That sounds weird, but I've never driven a motorcycle. I think they're fine. They're obviously cheaper on gas, so they can be good for getting around. Not as much here in Canada, where you have to spend like 7 or 8 months of the year with them parked because of the weather, but CJMM14. Hey Matt, 2 quick questions for you. What is the single best movie you have ever seen? If you haven't seen The Mission, I highly recommend it. I've never even heard of The Mission. It has a great narrative and is arguably the most perfect movie I studied in film school. Single best movie I've ever seen. That is tough because I remember when Batman Begins, the first Batman movie in the Christopher Nolan series. I remember when that came out and I watched it. I loved it. Just felt exhilarated. Walked away from that movie just totally exhilarated. Return of the King and Lord of the Rings. I love that movie too. It has some very exhilarating moments. So those two are definitely up there. I don't know if I could tell you. Dave would answer this question really well. He's a film buff. He loves movies. He loves talking about movies. So that's definitely a question you want to ask him, like on a Shrine of Chaos or something. But I don't know if I could give you one that's like my ultimate favorite movie. Because there's a few that would kind of fall under that. But those are the two that come to my mind right away. Is the first Batman in the Christopher Nolan series, not the original Batman, and the Return of the King and Lord of the Rings. And then there's a lot of movies I like. I enjoy a lot of the comic book movies, like Thor 2 especially was really good. Captain America, the Winter Soldier was pretty good. Guardians of the Galaxy was fun. You know, I can enjoy those movies, even if they're not my absolute favorite. So, secondly, how is the baby Ripper doing? Getting enough sleep? Funny that you should say that. The past 2 nights have been pretty rough. She's been kind of just, not that she's been crying or anything, but she's just waking up often, and that's kind of kept me from getting a really good restful sleep. So the past 2 nights have been hard. But other than that, she's actually been doing really well. So she's very healthy. She's growing well. Just a good baby overall. Just the past 2 nights have been hard. I'm a little tired right now. Neo Navy. Hey Matt, I was having a discussion earlier about the Sisters of Battle Exterminatus relics for Necrons. More specifically, the Edge of Eternity and how it precision strikes on a 2+. My thoughts were that because of this, the Overlord can always hit on a 2, regardless, as even in a 1-on-1 combat, he just allocates a strike to his solo target. What do you think of this as a means of making Overlords even better in close combat? Ooh, I haven't read the rules for the Edge of Eternity one. Can I look it up super fast? And remember, we're getting the new Necron Codex in a week and a half. And so that could change the way that Overlords work to begin with. And so that could, who knows, change the balance of it. But if I can get this fast, you said it's under Exterminatus. So there it is. Exterminatus. No, not Altar of War. That was already open. Exterminatus. Let's look up. Exterminatus missions. No, not missions. So we got the. So you're talking about the Sisters of Battle ones. Did they have Sisters of Battle relics in Exterminatus, or are you talking about the other Shield of Baal book? Unless it's no. Oh, here we are. Okay, here it is. Edge of Eternity, 20 points. Necron Overlord. This item replaces the model Staff of Light, gives it +2 strength, so strength 7, AP2. Armor Bane. Executioner, 2-handed, so it's like a War Scythe, but Executioner. The Bearer of the Edge of Eternity has the Precision Strike special rule. I don't see anything about a 2+. The Edge of Eternity and how it precision strikes on a 2+. There's nothing in there that says that. It just says it has precision strike special rule. It has +2 strength. Is that what you saw? Yeah, so it's +2 strength, AP2. Like, it looks cool. It's 20 points. It makes it good, but precision strike doesn't usually have a huge amount of effect, especially because he's a character, and so the things that you're going to want to precisionally hit are typically in a challenge with you, and you can hit them anyways. Peter Gooding. Another great sit and talk, and you briefly mentioned that 40k is basically fantasy in space, which is rather interesting as it brings me to my question. Theoretically, could a 40k army face off against a fantasy army, other than demons, obviously? I.e., could my Tyranids go and fight a Lizardman army? As a relatively new player, less than a year, I'm afraid I don't know the rules of fantasy, but I'm wondering if they could be incorporated into 40k. Okay, 40k and fantasy aren't really compatible. They have like a, when you play one and then you play the other, you can see that they're created by the same company. Like, they have the same kind of stat lines, strength, toughness, attacks, all that. But the way the rules work fundamentally is incredibly different. Like, sure, they have their move, they have their shoot, they have their assault phase, they have a magic phase, but it's just so different. It has a very similar flavor, but still very different. I've always wanted to try playing like a 40k versus fantasy, that when the 40k player is going, you use the 40k rules, except like if for morale and all that kind of stuff. Basically, whatever is being affected uses their rules, however that might work. So because their strengths are similar and all that, it doesn't make sense that this bolter can't, it has a harder time penetrating armor. So that's the thing, like the weapons in fantasy don't even have AP values. They don't have AP 6 or AP 5. Because their strength actually determines how well they penetrate armor, and it modifies armor rather than just ignoring it, which I wish 40k would do too, but not necessarily the strength thing, but have an AP that modify armor rather than just either you get it or you don't. Because I picture like a weapon that's good armor piercing, like let's say you give it an AP 2 in the sense that it reduces armor by 2, so a 2+ save becomes a 4+ save. It would really totally change the balance of the game, and you'd have to redo all the points costs, and I don't think they'll ever do that. But it would make it so that Terminators still have their good armor, but it gets worsened. That's how fantasy works. If I go up against something with my strength 5 weapon, for every strength higher than 3, basically reduce the armor save of the recipient of the attack by 1. So you go up against something, so something could have a 1+ armor save, and that's actually useful because they get hit by a strength 4 weapon, and that 1+ becomes a 2+, and so they're still getting a 2+ armor save. Of course, a 1 is always a failure. You hit them with strength 5, and that becomes a 3+. Strength 6, and that becomes a 4+. The weapons could have the special rule of armor piercing, which gives a further -1 to the armor. And so I like that system in terms of armor saves. But then movement is very different because they kind of move and they pivot, and they can march, and they can charge, and they declare that in the movement phase rather than the assault phase. And yeah, so they're not really compatible, but you could probably figure out a way to play them together. There's probably even a rule set out there that somebody's done. Right. Adam Nat. Hi Matt, writing to you from Sweden. I study religion at the University of Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. And that of course makes me interested when you mention that you're a man of faith. Mormonism isn't particularly big in Sweden, as far as I'm aware. I think you're right. And therefore I want to ask you some hopefully harmless questions about your faith. So like I said, I'll give brief answers here. And if you want more details, send me an email, matthew@miniwargaming.com. I think I remember you saying that Dave and you are part of the same church. Yes, that is true. Is any of your other employees member of the same church? No. Are they active in any other religious communities? That I will decline to answer, just because it's not really the place for me to sit here and talk about religious views of my employees. So, are some of the players that come into you members of your church? Yes, it's happened. Not very many. I can't even think of any off the top of my head that you would recognize, because it's been a while. And lastly, out of the blue, are there any esoteric elements in Mormonism? Does it have any connections with Freemasonry? Well, I know Joseph Smith, the founder of the church, was a Freemason at one point. But does it have any connections? No, not at this point. Besides the fact that, he was a Mason back then. Sorry for the questions, and I'm not sure what you mean by any esoteric elements. I'm actually, that word esoteric, I'm not quite sure what it means. I'll be honest. Just being honest there. Sorry for the question spam, but I was interested and have been meaning to ask you for a while now. Thanks for all the videos. Love, Adam. Adam, feel free to send me an email, and you can ask me more in-detailed questions or in-depth questions, and I'll be happy to respond to them. I might take a few days because I'd like to make sure I have enough time to do a good response. How are we doing for time? Oh, not too bad. Colossus, Matt, you need to show some of the new Necron formations and Mephrit in action before the Codex drops. I ran the Catan in 2 Cryptek formation. Make sure one has a good shackle. Has a god shackle. Makes the Catan much more effective. Yeah, doesn't it give him like a better invuln or higher toughness or something like that? Vault member for life. I just played my Necrons in a game not too long ago, but I haven't been playing them very much. I'll be honest, I've been more interested in getting the Tau up and running so I could play them in the narrative campaign, so I wanted some experience with them, and the Tyranids have been more interesting. Both the advent of the new Necron Codex, you can totally expect to see more Necron stuff coming out. Johagen, not so much of a question, but I have been coming to Mini Wargaming for the past year purely for fantasy and sit and talks. And if you were to get a campaign for fantasy, I most certainly would get a Vault membership. Also, I would just like to say how much I love your connection with your fan base, Matt. Being honest with your company and the show is such an awesome thing to see. Keep it up. Well, thank you. As for the fantasy stuff, you are going to soon see an increase in fantasy content. How soon before you see Fantasy Narrative Campaign, I can't say yet, but you will soon in the next month or two see more days of fantasy battle reports. That is our plan. Static Blur. Hey Matt, first off, the Furriers thing was so funny, couldn't stop laughing. Second, thanks for the advice on my Tyranid army. Now I have a question that I find interesting. If Necrons and Tyranids were both at full strength and the war came down to them, who would win? By full power, I mean all the tomb worlds have awoken and all the hive fleets came together to fight off the Necrons. Just thought that this wasn't a cool idea. Don't have to answer this question if it has been asked. Well, I don't think it's been asked specifically that way. If all the tomb worlds were reawoken and were at their full power, they would definitely provide an incredibly strong resistance to the Tyranids because they're just incredible power. And on top of that, they're all robots. And so one of the strengths of the Tyranids is that even in not totally winning the combat, they can still make up for their losses because they can eat you and incorporate your biomass. But Necrons have no biomass. And so they wouldn't have that advantage. So I'd have to say Necrons. That being said, there's a caveat there in that we don't know how many hive fleets are still out in the void between galaxies. This could just be like the tip of the spear, in which case there could be 100,000 times more Tyranids out there, in which case obviously nobody would stand a chance. But if what we're seeing is like a good chunk of the Tyranids, and there's still more to come obviously, then I still think the Necrons would win, just because of the superior technology and the fact that the war of attrition wouldn't be as effective a means of battle, which the Tyranids are always happy to do. Screamer Killer Sam. Hola, Matt. Followed mini wargaming through YouTube, now jumping into the vault. Well, thank you. Quick question. Have you ever tried using a Tyranid Prime and a unit of Lictors? Put the Lictors behind some Gaunt or Gargoyle cover for the 5-up cover. They have Stealth for 4-up, and drop some Venom Throats behind for a nice 2-up cover. Whew! I'm testing out some Tyranid Death Stars as everyone is overusing the Flying Hive Tyrant with Twin Link Devourers combo, which I use back and forth. You couldn't even fly them, and they used to reroll to wound. I have tested a 6-man Zoanthrope unit with a Prime, and it's very powerful. I'm going to try the Lictors out, so wanted your opinion, Sam. The only issue I see is that, what are you going to do with it? Sure, it might keep the Lictors alive. And Lictors are strong, strength 6, rending, but other than that, if he's with them, then they're not deep striking, which is one of their, or infiltrating, which is one of their strengths, is being able to just kind of pop up behind a vehicle, put their 2 strength 6 shots in, and if there's enough of a problem, then they might survive long enough to kill the vehicle. So sticking them back in when you deploy, just having them deploy normally with a Prime with Gargoyles in front of them, that means that you have them not even at the 12-inch mark, which means they're close combat units, so I don't see them really being that effective. So I don't see the utility there. So the Emerald Knight 15. Hey Matt, I really enjoyed the 40k history and tactics. Those 6-minute vids were so awesome. You don't even have to know the tactical from experience. You could just do a quick web search and find something. I think people would love them, and so on. And of course, Vault Member for life. The 40k history and tactica videos are definitely interesting, and the people do like them. And they might become something that we do on a regular basis, but as time has gone on, we've kind of realized what we're really good at and focused on those things, such as battle reports. And so definitely there's going to be expansions to other things, but not anytime soon, I would say. Golden Drak. Hi Matt, another dose of willing suspension of disbelief. Regarding flying monsters, creatures, and flyers getting cover saves, the fighter aces and flying monsters, creatures of the 40k century are perfectly capable of using ruined buildings and forests as cover. Life is cheap, and flying or swooping behind a variety of cover holds no fear for the brave or fearless denizens of the universe. Yeah, for sure. It just seems weird. The same could be said for fly monster creatures getting a jink save on the charge. Just because they are charging does not mean they fold up their wings and put them away. Incoming fire, a quick flap at a jink, right, and voila, no hits. The problem with that is that if you're kind of dodging as you're charging into combat, that will slow you down. And so it should count for something. Like I would say that if you choose to jink as you charge, you should get like -2 to your charge range or something to represent your sideways movements rather than your forwards movements. So that's what I don't like about it. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, and especially gameplay wise, that there'd be no disadvantage to jinking as you charge. So I just don't like that. Orphan Maker. Hi Matt, I'm just curious, have you ever watched the Babylon 5 series? I did watch some of it when I was a lot younger, so I don't remember a lot of it. And so what do you think of it? I have found it to be the most epic space opera saga ever shown on television. I do remember thinking that it was, when I look back on it, it does seem to be very well done. But since now it's so old, sometimes it's hard to go back and watch those kind of shows just because their pacing is different, the technology is different, and all that. But I do remember thinking it was good. It has an amazing story arc, memorable characters, and a mature way of dealing with very serious subjects. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. I remember it wasn't too long ago in the past few years that I tried watching it again, and I remember getting bored because it's just, it's just a different pacing. Now a 40k question. I am a Tau player, and I'm having a lot of problems dealing with my friend's Chaos Space Marine list. Really? Interesting. He usually brings 2 squads of spawns with Mark of Nurgle and 2 or 3 Mauler Fiends, as well as 2 squads of Noise Marines and some regular Chaos Space Marines and Rhinos. It is just so fast I can never stop it before they slam into my lines, especially hate the spawns, being toughness 6 with many wounds. How would you tackle such an army? Thanks to keep up the good work. Well, I'm no Tau expert yet, because I've only been playing them for a little while. So, but at the same time, I'm surprised that list gives you a problem because there's so many things that could answer to that. Sure, toughness 6 spawns are hard, but don't they have no save? And so just a simple Fire Warrior squad firing at them with their strength 5 weapons, they're going to be wounding on 5s, no saves. That should be able to chew through them pretty fast. Chaos Space Marines and Rhinos, they would disembark and rapid fire their bolters with their AP 5 at your 4-up armor save guys, who will mostly survive that and be able to return fire and probably kill them all. 2 or 3 Mauler Fiends, the vehicles, that provide a tiny bit more of a challenge, but then you have your broadsides, which will be really good at picking them off. Broadsides, and then your hammerhead tanks, they can be good at helping against those. EMP grenades are your friends, really. I'd kit out 1 or 2 squads with EMP grenades. People are like, oh, they cost too much, but every time I bring them, I see them just do so much damage, and they make vehicles look like nothing. I shouldn't tell you that. No, I'll tell you something, I just won't tell you what it's from. I had a squad of 4 Tau Fire Warriors charged by a super heavy vehicle. Sorry, there was 6 of them, and they inflicted 4 out of 5 of the hull points of damage because they had EMP grenades. So yeah, and I've seen that happen with time and time again with other vehicles as well, that they just destroy them. So the Mauler Fiends would die really easily to EMP. So if nothing else, just EMP. The Noise Marines, yeah, obviously they're going to be a little tougher when they drop out of those Rhinos, but the same thing, you can pop those Rhinos so quickly that it shouldn't be too much of an issue for mobility. So that's how I would tackle it, with my limited knowledge of Tau. Whitmore Gator says, hey Matt, what do you think is the reason for the lost Primarch? 2 and 11 legions, I think. The 2nd and the 11th Legion. Did GW just forget to name 2 of them? Do you think they will ever bring those stories to light? I think the reason is because they wanted some mystery that maybe one day they could fill in. Other than that, I don't know. Really love what you guys do. Keep up the good work, and thanks for all your awesome vids. PatRat123. Matt, I thought I should tell you, cased as in fire cased is pronounced cast. That is incorrect. I made sure to look this up. Cased, pronounce, hold on. Cased. Unless I'm getting it backwards.
Cast.
Oh,
Cast.
This is cast. I remember looking that up because somebody said I did it wrong before. And then I thought that it was cased, not cast. So you're right, it's cast. Oh, crap. I've already done a bunch of the narrative campaign stuff and I kept calling them case. Oh well, maybe I'll be forgiven. You're right, it's cast. Sorry, PatRat123, you were right. Pap XXX, hey Matt. French fries come from Belgium. Thank you. The more you know. Tau Painter 40K. And entered a wild Dave. Tau Painter 40K. Hey Matt, I just had a few questions about allied forces. 1, what is, in your opinion, the most overpowered alliance you have played with or against? The Taudar were a big one. I don't know if they're still a big thing. But or any alliance that involves Imperial Knights, because obviously those things are tough. 2, what is your overall thoughts on the alliance chart? I think it's great. I like it. I like that they basically allow you to bring anything with anything. 3, what is the worst alliance you have played with or against? Worst meaning the armies just were not working out together at all. I played one game in a narrative campaign where Tyranids were allied with orcs. That didn't go so well. Loving the content you guys are putting out. Keep up the great work. Thank you. I'm going to be ending this pretty soon. I know I'm not quite at an hour yet. I'm just having a hard time focusing because I'm just so tired. Captain Kador. Hey Matt, I am just getting into fantasy after playing 40k in War Machine for a while. I split Island of Blood with my friend and got the high elf part. What unit do you think I should get next? Oh, I am the wrong person to ask that. I don't really play fantasy. You should get the next model that you think looks the coolest and will play really well in your army, is my answer. Sorry, I don't have any better answer than that. High Fleet Ryback. Hey Matt, after so many sit and talk videos where Tyranid players say they can't deal with vehicles, I decided to take part in a tournament here in Scotland. Its rules are 2k points, all models allowed. Single force org, no data slates or formations, no allies. The tournament lasted 1 month. You must play a minimum of 5 games and challenge different people of different skill. After the month was done, I came first out of 48 participants. I won 17 out of 17 games of Tyranids, blew up 13 Imperial Knights, tabled 4 total tank guard armies, killed 4 Transcendent Catans, and had faced every army in 40k. I want to share my list with you and all of Mini Wargaming viewers so NID players can finally get some wins over armored armies. Firstly, I use Leviathan Detachment. This allows 3 HQ and totally legal in every tournament. HQ, 3 flying hive tyrants, all with twin-link devours. Okay, yeah, I guess if you can bring 3 flying hive tyrants. Fast attack, 3 hive crones, definitely good at anti-vehicle. Troops, 3 groups of 10 hormagaunts. And then heavy, 2 trigons with toxin sacks, and 1 toxicrene in a pod that has barb stranglers. Yes, it's cheese, but 10 monster creatures is a strong list. 6 flying monsters creatures, all with heavy template weapons, 12 haywire missiles, 3 haywire templates, deep strike monster creatures that are very close combat heavy, and not to mention the psychic brother powers could have novas and flyers or feel no pain on various targets. I hope people use this and finally tanks don't bother NIDs again. All the best. Yeah, the 3 Daka Flyerants definitely will help there. They can take out a lot. So yeah, bringing in all flying monsters creatures. Unfortunately, it's kind of a boring list. Fine for tournaments, but boring for battle reports. And as soon as you use it once against your friends, hopefully you won't use it again, because it kind of gets boring playing the same powerful list. One more question. Tom Will 14. Why doesn't Games Workshop give anyone a discount on bundles? Like you could get a paint bundle with some paints you don't need in it, and you just waste money. You could buy the right paint separately for the same price. They do have things that are cheaper in bundles, and that's usually like their battle forces and stuff. But overall, Games Workshop isn't in it to give you discounts. They are just trying to sell nice, expensive models, and the way they see it is they don't need to find ways, price-wise, to sell you the model. And in a way, they're totally right, because it's a niche industry, and nobody sells their products except them. Independent retailers do, but whatever price they sell them at is a set price that they have to buy them at, so it doesn't affect Games Workshop as much if a retailer decides to sell them at a discount or bundle deals or whatever. Although I know you can say, well, then they don't buy it directly from Games Workshop, but it's going to be good for them to have independent retailers sell this stuff. So Games Workshop is like, you're going to buy our models because you love our models, not because there's some sort of discount deal. You might think, well, I might buy more of them, but since it's a limited supply thing, it's almost like a monopoly because nobody else does their products. Sure, there's competing games like War Machine or Infinity or one of the other hundreds of games that are out there, and there's competing things for your attention, such as video games and movies and books and other forms of entertainment. But in the end, they kind of have a monopoly on what they sell, which is 40k and fantasy. And if you're into that, you don't really have alternatives, except a few alternatives that are out there that usually are subpar and not quite as good, or very, very limited in what you're able to get. And so a monopoly, if you learn in economics, is able to basically set their price almost wherever they want. And then it just comes to a point of making sure they set it not so high that nobody buys their products, obviously. But since there's none of that real competition, and I know they have competition, I do know that, but it's different than other markets where everybody's making very similar products. Nobody makes similar products to Games Workshop products. They just don't. And I'm not just talking about level of quality. I'm just talking like those who do have quality, it's going to be a different game. They're not totally replacements, and you won't be able to find players to play against. Or maybe it's War Machine, and you could find players to play against, but then the models are just so drastically different that it's just different. So yes, there's competition, but at the same time there's not, which means price isn't as big a point in how they sell miniatures. It's just not the biggest part. The way they sell miniatures, well, there's 2 ways. One is to make awesome, frickin' awesome miniatures, and 2 is to just keep putting out rule books and supplements and data slates and everything else to give you more ways to play with those miniatures. That's what they do. Not discounting miniatures, not giving you deals, because that devalues their product. Because it's not like, are you going to buy a Tyranid Carnifex from us or from somebody else. Like, sure, there's an independent retailer you could buy it from, but hey, that means we didn't have to stock that product. The independent retailers buy the product from us, put it on their shelves, they pay for the space in the building, they have already paid for the product, and so yeah, it works. It works either way. It's a win-win situation for them. So that's why you're going to see them not too concerned. But having said that, they do have things like battle forces or the starter sets, which give you kind of a good deal on it. But I don't think you'll ever really see bundle deals where they give a discount, because I don't think they need to. That is the end of my spiel. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more Sit and Talks. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming. Happy Wargaming.